फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक। तो फ्रेंड्स, अभी का वीडियो है हाउ अग्निपथ विल चेंज द फॉर्च्यून्स ऑफ इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस। अग्निपथ स्कीम एक्सप्लेन्ड। चलो, अभी एक्सप्लेन्ड बोला है और आप लोगों ने ही सजेस्ट किया, और सारी वीडियो जो मैं देख रही हूँ ना, वो सब आप लोगों ने ही सजेस्ट की हुई है।
देखिए, वही है ना, एक्सप्लेनेशन है। जैसे हमने कहा था, गवर्नमेंट या आर्मी की तरफ से एक्सप्लेनेशन है कि किसी भाई साहब ने समझ के बताया, वो भी अच्छी बात है। मगर हमें ट्रूली चाहिए था आर्मी की स्टेटमेंट आए। अच्छा, मतलब जिन्होंने जो प्लान लेके आ रहे हैं, जैसे कह रहे हैं गवर्नमेंट प्लान लेके नहीं आ रहा, आर्मी प्लान लेके आ रही, तो आर्मी का कोई प्रोफेशन कहे देखो भैया, हम जो है ये प्लान लेके आ रहे हैं, हम आपको एक्सप्लेन करेंगे। ये हमारा छोटा सा वीडियो है जो एक्सप्लेन करता है। चलो, ऐसा होना चाहिए।
अब ये पहले वीडियो
अगर फीडबैक नहीं है तो लोगों को फीडबैक देना चाहिए, मोदी जी को जो उनके सेशंस होते हैं उनमें देना चाहिए कि भाई ऐसी जब बड़ी कुछ चीज आ रही है तो ऑफिशियल को ही बोलो कि वीडियो निकाल दो,
ताकि पहले ही सबको नॉलेज हो जाए। तो चलो वीडियो शुरू करते हैं। वीडियो शुरू करने से पहले अगर आप चैनल पर नए हो और आपने अभी तक सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो जल्दी से पहले सब्सक्राइब के बटन और बेल आइकन को क्लिक कर लो, ताकि आपको हमारे सारे न्यू वीडियोस के नोटिफिकेशन मिल जाए जैसे हम अपलोड करें।
अगर आपको वीडियो पसंद आता है प्लीज लाइक एंड शेयर। चलिए शुरू करते हैं।
अग्निपथ योजना में भारतीय नौजवानों को बतौर अग्निवीर आर्म्ड फोर्सेस में सेवा का अवसर प्रदान किया जाएगा।
Government of India has unveiled the new defence recruitment reform, AGNIPATH.
We will provide opportunity to the youth to serve the nation for short and long duration as Agniveers.
India is witnessing massive protests across the nation as aspirants are unhappy with the scheme. They feel taking away pension benefits provides them with no job security.
In order to transform the armed forces into youthful, tech-savvy, modern, there is a need to harness the youth potential and make him a future-ready soldier.
Hi everybody, on 14th of June 2022, the Defence Minister of India and the Chiefs of the Indian Army, Navy and Air Force announced the rollout of the AGNIPATH scheme. And by now you already know that it is a recruitment model for the youth in the Indian Armed Forces. And as we have seen in the past 1.5 weeks, there have been massive protests all across the country. Trains have been burned, civilian properties have been damaged, and as usual, social media has been flooded with radical opinions. So we spent the past 4 days trying to talk to people, ex-servicemen and even media professionals of both sides to actually try to understand why is this such a controversial issue. And in this episode, we are going to put forth both these perspectives to help you understand what exactly is the AGNIPATH scheme all about. From the government standpoint, why is it absolutely necessary for India? From the citizen standpoint, what are the advantages of this scheme? And lastly, what are the drawbacks which have triggered the protests all across the country? So if this episode makes sense to you, please share this message in your social circle to educate India about this burning issue of AGNIPATH. This video is brought to you by Kuku FM, but more on this at the end of the video. The first thing we need to understand is why exactly are the armed forces introducing the AGNIPATH scheme and how is it intended to benefit the country? And the answer to this lies in this chart. Now, if you look at both these columns over here, you will see that on the left we have defense pensions and on the right we have something called the capital outlay of defense services. This is the capital that is actually spent on buying new weapons, aircrafts, warships and other military hardware that actually modernizes the army and makes it super powerful. Now, if you look at how much the army spends on pensions versus capital outlay, you will see that from 2009-10 to 13-14, the money spent on pensions were less and the capital outlay was significantly higher. In fact, it was 70% more than pensions. But suddenly from the next year onwards, you will see that the capital outlay dropped by 5,700 crores and the money spent on pension drastically increased by 15,000 crores. And from here onwards, the gap between pensions and capital outlay has always stayed narrow. The question is, what happened in 2014 that the pension cost suddenly shot up so high? Well, this is where a scheme called One Rank, One Pension scheme rolled out. In simple words, what this meant was that if you're an Indian Army officer who retired after 15 years of service in 2014 and another officer retired in 2020 after serving the same tenure of 15 years with the same rank, your pension and his pension would be the same. Now you see, the salaries of army men increases with the passing of time and so do their pensions. So when the pensions of servicemen who retired before got equalized to the current pension amount, it drastically shot up the pension expense. And if you look at the impact of this move, you will see that from 2016-17 to 19-20, the spending on defense pensions was actually more than the capital outlay itself. So in short, we were spending more on pensions than we were on modernizing the army. And this is what is being viewed as a dangerous, unviable trend. This is the reason why the army wants to decrease its burden on pensions and wants to channelize the money towards developing and modernizing our army with the latest weapons, latest vehicles and latest equipments. Apart from that, our army chief also stated that AGNIPATH would reduce the average age of the army from 32 to 26 years over the due course of time. This is the reason for the rollout of the AGNIPATH scheme. If this is very clear to you, let's try to understand what is this scheme all about and what are the benefits being offered by the army. Under this scheme, we will see 46,000 youngsters from the age of 17.5 to 23 years being inducted into the 3 batches of the armed forces, which are Army, Navy and Air Force. These Agniveers will serve only for 4 years instead of 15 to 19 years, and this 4-year tenure will also include a training period of 6 months. Apart from that, the Agniveers will earn a salary package of 30,000 rupees for the first year and will get a 10% hike every year. That means in the second year, their salary would be 33,000, 36,500 in the third year and 40,000 in the fourth year. Meanwhile, apart from this, 30% of their salaries will be deducted every month for the Seva Nidhi corpus. And at the end of their service, which is after 4 years, the center will add an equal amount and a total of 11.77 lakhs will be paid to each Agniveer. This amount will be completely tax-free. So after 4 years, up to 25% of the candidates will be retained to serve in the army till retirement and the rest will be retired with a lump sum amount of 11.77 lakh rupees. Along with that, during this tenure, they'll also have death and disability compensation from the army. This is how the army intends to cut down its budget on pensions. Now the question is, how much money is this move going to save? Well, the exact calculation for AGNIPATH is not quite stated, but in 2020, the army submitted a rough calculation of how much money can be saved by trimming the manpower in the armed forces. And at that time, it had proposed a 3-year model instead of the 4-year model like AGNIPATH. And as per the proposal, the comparison of cost incurred by the government for a Sipahi with 17 years of engagement as compared to a Sipahi with 3 years of service, the prospective life savings for just one Sipahi is 11.5 crore rupees. So merely by trimming down the army by 1,000 jawans, the army could save 11,000 crores. And this huge amount could then be used to upgrade the army with the latest weapons and latest equipments that will make our forces insanely powerful. So this is a win-win, right? The army becomes powerful and for the jawans, it is providing insurance, a decent salary and a lump sum amount of 11.77 lakh rupees. Then why is there so much protest all across the country? Well, apart from political instigation and paid protesters, there are 3 sensible arguments made against the AGNIPATH scheme. The first argument is that if the Jawan after serving for 4 years don't get pensions because of budget, then why isn't the government cutting down on the pensions of MPs and other government officers? In fact, an MP who serves for just 5 years is entitled to a minimum pension of 20,000 rupees per month. And the fun fact is that the information received under the Right to Information Act by P.P. Kapoor reveals that actress Vaijayanti Mala gets 39,000 rupees and stars like Rekha and Chiranjeevi get 27,000 rupees each as monthly pensions from the government. So the argument is, why isn't the government cutting down on those expenses? Well, one part of the answer is that even if the government does that, they will barely save a few hundred crores, which is not the same as pensions of lakhs of retired Jawans. But the counter argument over here is that if budget is really a problem, regardless of the AGNIPATH scheme, the pensions and perks to these super rich ex-MPs must be cut down. And this makes complete sense to me. The second argument is that will a temporary soldier who is looking for job security risk his life for the country? Because you see, the armed forces are the last resort to emergency after everyone from bureaucrats to police have failed. So it's not the minister or the government officer, but the soldiers of the army who get inside a blazing terrorist occupied hotel. Similarly, it's not the minister or the government officer, but a soldier who stands at the border at extreme temperatures with bullets showering over his head. So the question is, will someone be willing to risk so much for a temporary stint of just 4 years in spite of knowing this inequality? If you ask me, I really don't have the credibility or the perspective to answer this. So if you have the answer to this, please drop your answer in the comments. And this brings me to the third argument, and that is, when the Jawans retire after 4 years with no pension or guaranteed job, what will they do? And this brings me to the most important part of the episode, and that is about what is the government doing to help these Jawans earn a livelihood after they fall out of the army. Before we move on, I want to thank our partners Kuku FM for supporting our content. Kuku FM is India's leading audio learning platform with over 1000 plus hours of content library with over 4.5 plus rating and a huge library of non-fiction content. Here you can explore a plethora of high-grade content for both business and geopolitics. And if you're deeply interested in the subject of Indian Army, you must check out the audio show on Field Marshal KM Karyappa or Field Marshal Manik Shah. And for business, my recent favorite book summaries include Start With Why for Leadership and The Art of Negotiation. So if these kind of subjects intrigue you, use the code THINK50 and get a 50% discount on their yearly subscription. This is applicable only for the first 1,000 people, so go ahead and download the Kuku FM app from the link in the description. Moving on, let's understand how could the retired Jawans from the army find a place in the society and earn their livelihood. Because after all, this is the reason why the protests are happening, right? Well, for this, the first misunderstanding or perhaps an unknowingly made assumption is that the armed forces only teach you to hold a freaking gun and make you do exercises. Because after all, that's what Bollywood has told us, right? But the reality is that the armed forces actually teach you way beyond that. First of all, it inculcates discipline, mannerism, chivalry, persistence, and most importantly, the ability to perform during adversities, all of which are very, very important in every single industry in the 21st century. But apart from that, the armed forces have a plenty of technical trades and exposure to cutting-edge technology. For example, a soldier trained in the IF to be a radar technician can find employment in the airline industry. A naval recruit could work in merchant shipping. And as Avinash Chitke writes in India Times, with a little reskilling, a radar technician could learn to repair computers and mobiles and might even go on to manufacture them. So long story short, the attributes and skills learnt in the armed forces are not useless and will be more than enough to help the candidates fetch competitive roles in the industry. In fact, this is the reason why leaders like Anand Mahindra and Tata Sons chairman Mr. Chandrasekharan have already recognized the potential of Agniveers and have welcomed the move to employ them once they are out of the army. Secondly, the Ministry of Home Affairs has announced a 10% reservation for Agniveers in the Central Armed Police Force or CAPF and Assam Rifles. Thirdly, in order to enhance the future career prospects of Agniveers, the Union Ministry of Education is set to launch a special 3-year skill-based degree program that will recognize the skill training received by them during their tenure in the armed forces. Under this program, 50% of the credits required for a graduate degree will come from skill training received by the Agniveer, and the remaining 50% will come from a basket of courses which cover a wide variety of subjects like languages, economics, history, political science, public administration, sociology, mathematics, agriculture, and many more. Similarly, with each passing day, there are multiple announcements being made from multiple bodies and state governments to make sure that these Jawans are not left jobless. I'll give you a list for this in the description. Now the only question that remains is, will these bodies, state governments and corporates actually execute what they're saying and will stand up to their promise? And the answer to this will only be known once these Jawans fall out of the army. And lastly, if the retired Jawan wants to pursue something of his own, he would already have 11.77 lakhs of capital to start his business or perhaps use the time to study something else and find a job elsewhere. And if they want loans for entrepreneurship, it is being said that Agniveers will also be given priority under bank loan schemes. And again, it's a claim that can only be verified once these Jawans fall out and actually apply for a loan. And then we have the argument of the timing of the announcement and the hasty execution of this move by the army. Well, for this, my sense is that the army has much bigger fishes to fry with China, Pakistan, budget, COVID, terrorism, and critical defense relation and import of billion-dollar shipments to protect 1.3 billion people. So I think we should leave this to highly educated and experienced leaders like Lieutenant General Puri to decide how this needs to be done. These were the stories, details, arguments and counter-arguments of the AGNIPATH scheme. I am also attaching the interview of Ajit Doval sir on this scheme, so if you need more information on the same, this video is a must-watch. Now, it's completely up to you to decide whether this is good, bad, revolutionary or disastrous. And if this makes sense to you, please share this episode in your friend circle to educate India about the AGNIPATH scheme. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.
तो फ्रेंड्स, वीडियो बहुत अच्छी इन्होंने बनाई है, अनबायस्ड, दोनों साइड्स का इन्होंने जो इनको पता था वो उन्होंने सारा शेयर किया है, जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन आज पता चली है। और वो क्वेश्चंस भी, बहुत अच्छी बात ये थी कि जो मैं देख के सरप्राइज हुई कि जो जो क्वेश्चंस हम लोग पूछ रहे थे,
पूरे नहीं थे। देखिए, हमने क्वेश्चन किया था कि 6 महीने ट्रेनिंग मिली, ओके, जो बंदा पहले अग्नि पथ प्रोसेस से नहीं आता था, उसे कितनी ट्रेनिंग मिलती थी बिफोर कि वो वॉर में जाए?
की मिलती थी शायद।
ओके, तो अगर ये कह रहे हैं कि 6 महीने पहले भी मिलती थी, अब भी 6 महीने मिल रही है और फिर आप वॉर रेडी हैं। अब क्वेश्चन ये है कि अगर वॉर में आप
करेक्ट कर देना,
अगर आप वॉर में गए, आप शहीद हो गए, तो फिर क्या है? उसका आंसर भी नहीं आया।
कंपनसेशन मिलेगी, पर इन्होंने नहीं बताया, पर सुनने
नहीं
में
मतलब तो ये एग्जैक्टली पता चलना चाहिए, अगर शहीद हो जाता है जवान तो क्या मिलेगा। दूसरा ये क्लियर किया है कि आपको 50% क्रेडिट तो दे रहे हैं,
बाकी 50 तो मिला ही नहीं।
मुझे लग रहा है उसको पूरा कर देना चाहिए। मेरे को तो ये लग रहा है कि आप बोलेंगे देखिए 4 साल के लिए आ रहे हो, 4 साल के बाद जब निकलते हो तुम्हारे हाथ में बैचलर्स डिग्री आर्मी की मिल जाएगी तुम्हें, वो डिग्री इक्वल टू एनीवेयर एल्स है, उस डिग्री को लेके तुम कुछ भी कर सकते हो। फिर तुम कह सकते हो चलो 4 साल मैंने पढ़ाई की, मेरे पास डिग्री आई, मेरे पास थोड़ा पैसा भी आ गया
और एक्सपीरियंस भी आया, मैंने कुछ सीखा भी।
और अगर कोई शहीद होता है तो बहुत अच्छा आप करिए कि मतलब उसके टेक केयर कर सके। तो लोग बोलेंगे पेंशन आप मत दीजिए, मगर कुछ और करिए कि लगे हाँ भाई आप काफी कवर कर लिया, तो मेरे ख्याल से सक्सेसफुल हो जाएगा।
बिल्कुल वही है कि बेसिकली अब ये कह रहे हैं कि शायद 50% डिग्री का मिल रहा है। मुझे ये लगा कि वो वीडियो में ये कह रहे हैं कि 50% जो तुम ट्रेनिंग कर रहे हो उस टाइप की जो कर रहे हो,
और 50% पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी,
और 50% पढ़ाई करनी पड़ेगी, वो दोनों करके फिर तुम्हें
करेक्ट। तो वो भी वही है ना, वही है। तो उनका यह था कि जो भी तुम फिजिकल ट्रेनिंग कर रहे हो और जो भी ये सब ट्रेनिंग कर रहे हो, उससे 50% वहां से मिल गया तुम्हें, और 50% तुम्हें पढ़ना पड़ेगा वो कोर्स,
और उस कोर्स के बाद तुम्हें डिग्री मिलेगी। पर वो डिग्री इक्वल होनी चाहिए, कोई बाहर से जो पढ़ रहा हो बैचलर्स उसकी होनी, ताकि ये जब जाएं उसी जॉब के लिए तो इनको बल्कि ज्यादा प्रेफरेंस दिया जाए कि इन्होंने डिग्री भी ली हुई और साथ में मिलिट्री में से भी आए
और साथ में देश की सेवा भी की है।
देश की सेवा
तो फिर तो आप धीरे धीरे मेरे ख्याल से जो मॉडिफाइड चीजें हो रही हैं वहां तक जा रही है बात।
पर
जवान गया, जवान 4 साल का बाहर निकला, हाथ में डिग्री है, पैसा मिला
भी है,
फाइन,
और पता है कि मुझे नौकरी मिल जाएगी, मुझे धक्के खाने
और अगर कोई शहीद होता है तो जबरदस्त होना चाहिए टेक केयर करने के लिए कुछ समय तक, तो मेरे ख्याल से लोग बोलेंगे ओके गुड।
अगर ऐसा है तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। अब वही कह रहे हैं कि इम्प्लीमेंट जब करेंगे और उससे पता चलेगा कि कितना इम्प्लीमेंट हो रहा है, कि कई लोग प्राइवेट सेक्टर के भी बोल रहे हैं कंपनीज के हम लेंगे। अब बोलना और लेना
वो ठीक है, आप प्रेफरेंस देंगे, दैट इज वेरी गुड। मगर एक बार बैचलर्स डिग्री मिल गई और रिप्यूटेड है वो, तो सब बहुत कुछ हो गया,
लाइफ सेट हो जाएगी। मेन तो वही है। तो आप भी शेयर करना अपने थॉट्स, इससे काफी क्लैरिटी मिली है, पर कुछ क्वेश्चंस अभी भी हैं। तो चलो चलते हैं, मिलेंगे नेक्स्ट वीडियो में बहुत ही जल्द। टिल देन टेक केयर एंड बाय बाय।
तो अगर आप मेरे इस चैनल पे नए हो तो जल्दी से सब्सक्राइब के बटन को हिट करो और बेल आइकन को क्लिक करो, ताकि आपको मेरा जब नया वीडियो मैं लगाऊं आपको उसके बारे में जल्दी से पता चल जाए।